Hello, crafty friends, and welcome to my channel. I'm so excited you're here because today I'm diving into a brand new release by Kat Scrappiness. This is the Who-Ville Christmas collection, which is absolutely adorable, filled with playful holiday images, festive sentiments, and that magical Christmas cheer we all love. If you love all things merry, shiny, and a little bit whimsical, get ready because today's card is straight out of Whoville. This new Christmas release is packed with charm, sparkle, and so many creative possibilities. This release is packed with absolutely gorgeous pattern papers, festive stamps, and perfectly coordinating die sets. Everything you need to bring your Christmas cards to life. Well, I'll start off with the Who Will stamp set, which has the cutest little images you can use to build a fun and festive holiday scene. There's an adorable decorated Christmas tree, a cozy wood sign, and a tiny mailbox, along with stacks of presents, and of course, our sweet little characters wishing you a very Merry Christmas. This set comes with coordinating dies to make cutting and layering super simple. Next up, we have Mount Crumpit stamp set, which is a smaller 3 by 4 inch set that's just too cute to resist. Picture a reindeer pulling Santa's sleigh stuck on snowy Mount Crumpit with our little Mr. Grouch hanging on for dear life. It's such a fun, playful image, and well, this set also comes with a coordinating die that cuts this entire scene in one go. And of course, no collection is complete without some beautiful pattern papers. Next, we have the Whoville Christmas paper pad, and it's absolutely gorgeous. This 6 by 6-inch double sided paper pack features six stunning patterns with four sheets of each design that perfectly coordinate to match both the Mr. Crumpet and Whoville stamp sets. You will find a wonderful mix of festive holiday colors. We have rich greens, classic reds, snowy whites, and a few fun pops of colors to bring that Whoville magic to life. There are papers that make fantastic snowy backgrounds, some filled with delicate snowflakes, and others that feature tiny illustrations inspired by the stamped images themselves. What I love the most about these pattern papers that these aren't just great for card backgrounds. You can actually use them as coloring inspirations for your stamped images too. These designs and color palettes work beautifully together, making it super easy to mix and match and layer your projects for that perfect festive look. Now that we've looked at all the products from this fun new release, I'll be, well, using all of them today just to show you how beautifully they coordinate and work together to create a cohesive festive look. I'm starting off by stamping a few images and adding color to them using my alcohol markers. On a piece of white cardstock, I stamped the Mount Crumpet image along with the signboard image from the Whoville stamp set. I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp these images since I planned on heat embossing them for that extra shine and definition. Well, don't forget to use your anti-static powder tool before stamping your images. Also, just a quick tip, if you're heat embossing and planning to color with alcohol markers, make sure to let the pigment ink dry completely before you start coloring. Otherwise, it can smudge into your stamped lines. If you prefer to skip embossing, you can always use the Memento Black ink instead. It's alcohol friendly marker and it gives you crisp, clean lines every time. Personally, I love adding embossing powder to my stamped images, not just for that beautiful glossy shine, but also because it gives the colors a little extra pop once everything is colored in. It adds such a nice and polished finish to the design. After stamping the images, I sprinkled on some clear embossing powder. You could also use black embossing powder if you prefer a darker, crisper outline. It really depends on the look you want. Both options work beautifully. Now, since these images have some very fine and delicate details, I made sure that my heat gun was nice and hot before bringing it to the paper. This helps the embossing powder melt quickly and evenly without warping the cardstock. Now, as I melted the powder, I kept the heat gun moving. This is really important because it prevents the powder from overheating or over melting, which can cause those lines to lose their crisp edge. Once everything was melted, you can see that gorgeous glossy finish that adds instant shine and dimension to our stamped images. Here's a closer look at these images. Isn't that shine just absolutely gorgeous? I love how that embossing catches the light and really brings out all those fine little details in the design. Well, I'm going to give this panel a few seconds to cool down completely before starting the coloring process. This step is super important because coloring on warm embossing can sometimes cause the tips of your markers to pick that melted powder or ink. When it comes to alcohol markers, my go to favorites are my Ohuhu markers and the Spectrum Noir Triblend markers. Both of these blend beautifully and give you vibrant, even coverage, perfect for adding depth and shading to all those adorable Christmas details. Once my embossed panel was completely cooled, I began adding color to those adorable images. For the larger areas of the stamped image, I reached for my Ohuhu alcohol markers. These have wonderful brush tip, which makes them perfect for coloring in broad spaces and achieving smooth and even blends. I decided to stick with the classic Christmas color palette with rich greens, deep reds, and cool blues to bring in that cozy winter feel. These traditional tones instantly bring warmth and nostalgia to any Christmas card, and I love how they complement with the whimsical style of this Whoville collection. The Ohuhu markers blend beautifully, especially on smooth cardstock. I like to start with the lightest shade first and then gradually build up the darker tones to create soft shadows and dimensions. This helps give the image more life and makes them pop off the page. For all the smaller, more delicate details like this mount crumpet, the facial features, I switched over to my Spectrum Noir Triblend markers. These markers have a fine tip which makes it easier to control the color in tightest places without bleeding outside the line. The best part about these markers is that they come in three different shades. We have the light, medium to the darkest, so shading becomes a lot more easy. I took my time working through each section, making sure to keep my highlights bright and leaving a few areas of white space to mimic the look of reflected light. This small detail really enhances the shiny embossed lines and ties beautifully with the festive spark we'll be adding later. For the snowy mountain, I went with a very light blue marker to create that soft frosty look. I absolutely love the gentle gradient and the subtle shadows it adds. It really gives the illusion of depth and that cool, crisp winter feel. To make it more dimensional, I blended the edges with the slightest into white so it feels like snow catching the light. When it comes to the signboard, I colored the wood with warm brown tones, keeping the grain visible for more natural look. But I purposely left the letters uncolored, letting the white of the cardstock show through. I really wanted these letters to stand out and stay bright against the wooden background. Plus, we'll be adding some sparkly glitter to the uh, signboard, which will add a touch of shimmer and sparkle and make such a difference once the light hits it. At this point, the images already look so much fun and cheerful. The mix of embossed shine, bright colors, and soft gradients perfectly captures the Woohill Christmas magic. Once I finished coloring all the images, I moved on to die cutting. I die cut the colored panel first and then I also cut extra piece from scrap piece of white cardstock. The reason I like to do is simple. By adhering both these pieces together, it gives the die cut some extra strength and stability. This makes it much more easier to handle when layering it onto your cards and also helps the image sit nicely without bending or warping. With the die cut pieces ready, we are all set to assemble the card. Well, I did add some touch of sparkle to some places on the sleigh using gold gel pen. You could also use yellow marker, but I prefer using the gold gel pen over the yellow marker. I feel it's the small step, but it really makes a difference in the final look and feel of the card. Now that our focal point image is bright and colorful, it's time to add lots and lots of sparkle. Because what's a winter card without a little shimmer, right? Whenever I am working with winter theme projects, one of my absolute favorite products to use is the sparkle glitter. It's perfect for creating that magical snowy effect. Here's my process. I start by applying glossy accents to the areas of the image where I want it to resemble snow. For this card, I applied glossy accent on the areas of the mountain and the snow on the signboard. Once the glossy accent is applied, I sprinkle the glitter directly on top, making sure that the entire area is well coated. After sprinkling, I set aside the piece to dry completely. I always give it a minimum of 30 minutes because you want all that glitter to fully adhere to the glossy medium. Once it's dry, that beautiful glitter stays in place and creates the sparkly, snowy effect that really makes your image come to life. Here's a closer look at that absolutely gorgeous glitter on the signboard. Isn't it just stunning? I tapped off the excess glitter and let the glossy accents dry out completely. While my focal images were drying, I decided to move on to the background. For this, I chose this beautiful blue pattern paper from the Whoville Christmas paper pad featuring the delicate white dots that resemble falling snow. I cut the panel to measure 4 by 5 and quarter, which is slightly smaller than a standard A2 size card base. I love having the white border around the edges. To add a little extra depth, I applied subtle shading around the edges of the panel using different shades of light and dark blue. This gives the background a soft dimensional look without taking away from the focal point images. Next, I wanted my two focal point images to sit on snowy hills, so I used the hills from the Crafter's Essential Winter Edition dies by Kat Scrappiness. I created two separate hills, which I plan to layer on top of each other to create a natural layered snowy landscape. These hills will give the scene a sense of depth and help the characters feel more grounded in their whimsical Whoville setting. Next, I adhered both the snowy hills onto my pattern paper background. For the hill in the background, I applied liquid glue directly onto the paper for a smooth flat layer. And for the hill in the foreground, I wanted a little dimension, so I popped it up using foam tape, giving the scene a nice layered dimensional look. To tie everything together and add that magical winter sparkle, I also applied glossy accent along the edges of both the hills and sprinkled on some of that sparkly glitter, just like we did with our focal point images. This creates a soft, frosty effect that really enhances the snowy landscape. Once the hills were ready, I set the panel aside along with my focal point images to dry completely. I returned about an hour later to assemble all of the components together, and the scene was ready to come to life on a card base. Now that everything is completely dry, it's time to assemble the card. I started by placing my background panel with the hills on top of an A2 size card base. I made sure it was centered and adhered it using liquid glue so that it lays flat and secure. Next, I positioned my focal point images on top of the hill. I directly glued the mountain image on the background using liquid glue and also used foam tape for the signboard. Now, this helps the characters stand out a bit against that snowy landscape and adds depth to our scene. If you wanted, you could also add some sequin mix or snowflake sequences on the background and add a Merry Christmas sentiment on the front of the hill. But I decided to keep it as is, and well, maybe later on, while I decide to send it to someone, I would add a sentiment to this card front. And just like that, our card is finished. It's colorful, sparkly, and full of holiday cheer, perfect for sharing with your family and friends this holiday season. And there you have it. Our Whoville Christmas card is complete. I absolutely love how this card turned out. I hope this gives you some inspiration to play with the new Whoville Christmas release by Kat Scrappiness. Whether you're coloring, layering, or adding glitter, there's so many ways you could make your holiday card uniquely yours. All the supplies that I used to create this card will be listed down in the description box below. Please note that all of those links are affiliate links, which means you shop using one of my links. I'll get a small commission at no cost to you guys. Thank you again so much for joining me today. Until next time, stay safe.